advice that I have for you guys is stay focused and don't focus primarily on the money aspect. All right. Focus on building your skill.
What's going on, top tier traders? Brittany Hughes here, and welcome back to another top tier interview. I'm here in the studio today with a very special guest. But before we get started, as a reminder, make sure that you are subscribed to the top tier YouTube channel if you are not subscribed yet, because every single Friday we are dropping new interviews that are coming out. And I might be a little bit biased, but I'm just going to say they're fire. So you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed and your notifications are turned on so you are notified every Friday when we drop a new interview. But without further ado, Hamuzi, welcome to the top tier interview.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a good flight. Everything's beautiful. Miami looks beautiful.
Is this your first time in Miami or no?
Second time actually.
Okay.
Second time in Miami.
When's your first time?
First time was back when it was winter. So it was good. So I guess the weather was all right. Now it's a bit hot. But still, I would say the weather is still, it's doing its thing.
And you came out here just for the top tier keynote that we had last night.
Exactly.
Okay. How'd you find it?
It was good. It was educating. They talked about a lot of things, right? One of the things that caught my eyes, they're talking about the 24-hour payout, which is pretty cool to see. And how they even offer $1,000 if they don't
get paid in a day or get 1K.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool to see. And there was a lot of educated things and a lot of networking too. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about events like that, well, first of all, it was the first keynote that we've ever done, but outside of the actual keynote part of it and the presentation and new releases of products and things of like that is the networking and being able to connect with people that, you might have a relationship with online, but then in person, face to face, it just is such a different connection. And it's really, really valuable to be in those rooms with certain people in certain places. So I'm glad that you felt the same as well.
100%. It was beautiful. 100%.
Yeah. For people who don't know who you are, and this is the first time you and I are meeting as well. So through this conversation, I want to get to know you. I know individuals on the other end of the camera want to get to know you. And just so you know, the people who are tuning into this podcast, this could be their first exposure to trading.
Okay.
They could be in the depths of it, or they could be experienced traders. So I tried to ask questions that bring value to anyone, no matter where they're at in their journey. But to get to know you a little bit more, how long have you been trading for?
So I've been trading for about 4 years now.
Okay.
I'd say about 4 years. Yeah.
Okay. So you learned back in 2020.
Yeah, around that, yeah.
Okay. What did life look like for you? What did life feel like for you before you discovered trading? What were you doing?
So before I discovered trading, because I was, no matter what, I wasn't the type of person finding these type of excuses, right? So I'd always work a job. Any job I could find, I was working. So I was working at McDonald's.
Okay.
I was working at Mr. Lube's. I was working at, I was an upper technician. Anything. I would change off my resume to make it look like I have experience, right? So I would do anything because, we don't come from a background that has a lot of money. So I try my best, at any means possible to do anything I can to make money. So I knew there's no excuse, right? We're in a country, America, Canada, same thing. We're in the West. It's not difficult. If you really work hard to find even any type of job, right? To put yourself in that predicament. So I put myself in that predicament. I found jobs. I try to stabilize myself as much as I could. And I did that. And then eventually there was a time where I was like, okay, it's working, but I'm break even with life right now, right? Because there's bills to pay, there's this to do, there's this to do. So then I tried to find a bunch of things. I tried drop shipping. I tried social media marketing agency. I tried a bunch of things. They weren't sticking. I was doing. And then trading caught my eye, right? Because then I just seen the numbers there was just astronomical. When I just seen those numbers, I was like other people doing those numbers from YouTube. You get the ads, you get the thing.
I was going to ask, what was your first exposure? Was it just via social media?
Via social media, to be honest with you. So when I seen it on social media, I was like, okay, this really caught my eye. Okay, how can I go deeper into this, right? So, I learn. I deepened my knowledge off of YouTube as much as I could. Okay. So pretty much everything, most of the information that I got was YouTube in my beginning stages, as much as I can. Then it switched over to a lot of journaling, as much as I can. Then finally, the journaling stage was there. I somewhat then created my own model after that.
Okay.
Right? But most of the learning I've done, all that, I did as much as I could from YouTube, To be
That's
honest, yeah,
amazing. I
yeah,
mean, the resources are there,
exactly.
you know? So it's I think it's all about understanding and knowing yourself because I mean, it sounds like you've been a hustler from the beginning,
Yeah,
no
yeah, yeah,
matter
yeah.
what the circumstances.
Hmm.
And so for some people being able to have that self discipline and that self motivation to
Hmm.
apply free knowledge and free information,
Hmm.
I think says a lot about someone because I'm the type of person that I have to pay attention. Like
Yeah,
I'll invest at whatever the price tag is
yeah.
because I know I'm that much more bought in, and that's me though. So it's really cool to see that you've been able to,
Uh-huh.
and your come up and your startup was from just free information.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, actually, I do agree with that because like, when I started to become profitable, and I was like, all right, let me pass this down in a way. So then I started kind of teaching for free as much as I could.
Sure.
But what I realized was is that some people were not taking it serious.
Yeah.
Right. So some people, like, because now you're just giving them information for free, they're like, is it really thing? So they're half in, half out.
Yeah.
They're not really fully attentive into what it is that you're teaching.
Yeah.
They're going. And then eventually I was like, okay, it's so mixed. And then finally I was like, all right, let me do something where I can teach them, they'll pay, and then they'll actually learn, like, in affordable price, but they'll learn in a way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long did it take you to from the time you started to actually learn
Yeah.
to the time you're like, okay, I've got this, and you started to see some consistent profitability?
So for that, it will be about like 2 years and a bit.
Okay.
So, and then all of those were failures. A lot of lost money, a lot of blown accounts, a lot of the cliche stories, because it's true. That's why it's cliche. It's so
Yeah.
true, right? You go through that suffering, right? But the difference is, are you going to be that person that's going to, give up when it happens? Or are you going to be the person that's going to, fight through it and be like, all right, I can still do it. There's still opportunities. I can still learn from it. I can still learn from it, right? Because you could be that person where you could say, all right, look, I'll learn from it. Or you could be that person that says, all right, I will, but you don't do it. Then you put yourself in an endless cycle, and then you'll
Mm-hmm.
repeat. So instead of it taking you a short amount of period, it's going to take you longer and longer and longer because you're not learning from your mistakes. You're not learning from your mistakes. It's
Yeah.
going to be repetitive, right? But then once it got to a point where I said, all right, look, I'm losing a lot of money, right? I'm being very selfish about this too because I'm not thinking about my family, right? Greed is getting into me. I'm trying to make as much money as I can fast, and it's really messing up my learning. So now how can I break that down, right? So then I had an objective, I had a plan, I wrote down what I'm gonna do, X, Y, and Z. I said this is how I'm gonna learn, and then I went deeper into that learning. I took journaling very, 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 very serious. Like,
Walk me through that. I want to get specific in
yeah,
terms of what. So, would you say that greed was maybe the biggest
in the beginning,
challenge that
for
you
sure.
faced in the
Yes, yes,
beginning? And then
100%.
how did you overcome that? Through journaling?
Journaling,
And then
100%.
what were you journaling? Like what were those
Beautiful,
specifics?
beautiful. So then every trade that I would take, I would have for my entry model, I'd just mark it out, the stop loss, where the risk to reward was most cases. But every time at the end, I would take a screenshot.
Mm.
How did it look for the day? Okay, I take a screenshot again. Okay, for the next one, how did it look? Screenshot after screenshot after screenshot after screenshot. So then on the weekend when the market's closed, I look at it and I say, all right, this one took a loss. Why are these losses so, like, similar to each other? Because the
Mm.
losses are very similar to each other. The wins are random, but the
Yeah.
losses are very similar. So I
Mm.
said, all right, what's going on? Why are the losses so similar? Right? So when I broke that down, then I kind of inversed the way I was trading a bit.
Mm.
So then I inversed the way and I said, okay, so that's the reason why I was taking, okay. So then I broke it down. I started to eliminate some things, started to add some things in terms of let this be one more step before you enter, just to play on the safe side, right? Play it safe, right? And one thing that definitely did help me as well, because greed was the issue in the beginning, was undersizing my positions, right? At the same time. Because if you're in that learning stage, you are in no predicament to over risk your trades ever. Even if you are experienced, maybe you have, the justification to do so. But especially if you're starting, you cannot do that. You cannot be in a position to do that because your learning curve is gone, right? Because emotions are going to play out. You're going to feel hurt. Now, because you feel hurt, your psychology is messed up. Is this really for me? Is it not for me? But you put yourself in that predicament.
Exactly.
To do that.
You set yourself up for that one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's such a valid point. And I think it comes down to self-awareness. Like you've got to be it's one thing to actually learn how to trade, like
Mhm.
having a strategy, having an edge in the
Mhm.
market. That is one element of it. And that's a very important element, may I add. But then you have to marry that with a level of self-awareness because I've yet to interview, I don't want to say no one, but I've yet to interview someone that was like, no, I got it. And it was up and up from the time I started to learn how to trade.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like they have an edge in the market and then that they put that edge to the test. And while their edge might work, 50, 60, 70% of the time,
Mhm.
why they're not profitable and until they're able to actually reach that profitability is mostly just due to the psychological aspect of it.
Excellent.
You've got to be aware of yourself
Mhm.
and those holes that need to be filled in order for you to fill them and then gain that profitability ultimately.
100%. 100%.
When it comes to what do you trade? What
So
are you trading?
I
Forex, indices?
so indices.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm trading purely Nasdaq. That's it.
Okay.
So just when I started it was gold, but now it's purely just Nasdaq.
And why is there a reasoning as to why it's just Nasdaq?
Because remember I told you like journaling.
Yeah.
I have the most screenshots on Nasdaq.
Okay.
So for me to now go back to a different pair and then see can it potentially work, can it not?
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna be a whole new era of journaling now.
Yeah.
So now because I've been so focused on just one primary pair,
Mm-hmm.
and I've have so much data collected on that pair, so much data collected, which is the most important thing out of trading, in my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I said I'm gonna stick to that because that's after I seen profitability, after I seen everything. I said there's no need to look for other pairs. There's no need to look for this. No need to look for that. Let's just stick to one thing and then run from there. Right?
And so you're only trading New York session, obviously.
Yes.
And then what does your A plus setup look like?
Okay, so my A plus setup, what it looks like is primarily I wait for price to tap into a fair value gap.
Okay.
Long story short. So I have fair value gaps on the bigger time frame, and then I have fair value gaps on a smaller time frame, right? So from my journaling, what I've seen multiple times, right? I make videos upon a bunch of times, right? Is during a period of a day, right? And I'll say this without going too deep,
Sure.
right? Because it is my edge, I don't want to go too deep. But there are certain times of the day where you do see certain liquidity points where they're equal, not just one confusion. You're like, oh, swing high, there's liquidity, but when they're stacked up in a way, right? So I've seen from my journaling multiple times that anytime there's liquidity that's stacked up, like a high, another high that's next to another high, eventually it gets taken out, right? So your job as a trader, which I'll give you a hint, is to find an entry model that's gonna allow you to take that out. Right, whatever that entry model may be, you want to find that entry model and then you attack it. So most cases for me, I'm always attacking equal highs. I'm always attacking equal lows. Right, that's what I found out, and that's the best thing for me, and that has been working for me, and has been working for my students. And to put myself to the test and to be accountable with what I do, also that has also helped me extremely a lot. Is putting myself in a position where when I send out trades, I have to do it live. Right. And that's what's helped my accountability a lot as well. Because now I know it's not just my money that's at risk, but it's also other people. Right. So then I put myself in a predicament where, look, if I take a loss, they'll see me take a loss. If I take a win, I'll take a win. Right. How do I act? Do I feel like revenge trading? What do I do? How do I suppress myself? How do I do this? How do I do that?
Because you have people watching.
Because now you have people watching. Right.
Yeah.
How are you going to do everything? Right. So me going to that path and taking that, my win rate was all right, but the win rate shot up astronomically.
Oh, wow.
Than it has ever been before. Because because I primarily just wait for A++ setups. That's it. It may happen twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, right? But that's the only thing I go for. And that's the best thing that's ever helped. Doing it live, so people can see it live. And also helps with their conviction as well. They're like, all right, a mentor is doing it. He's just not really necessarily just making videos, but he's also doing it live in front of me.
Yeah.
Right? So what do I have to say about that? All right? And then that's what's going to help with the conviction.
Did that put any pressure on you at the start to start doing it live, or you were like, or not? Because I feel like it could go either way.
So in the beginning, because like now it's like, because usually you're used to doing it yourself, right?
Yeah.
So when you first start, you're like, all right, there's some pressure because now there's eyes on you,
Yeah.
right? You're like, thinking. But then you look back, you're like, bro, you collected so much data, right? You've been journaling for a long time. You've been doing it yourself anyways. What's really the difference? You know how your A++ edge looks like regardless. Why not just wait for that? Send it out, right?
Yeah.
And then my trading completely changed where it's like, all right, well, if I'm sending it out when I'm sending my A++ models, which is what I take care of for my main anyways, why not do that as well for myself and just do A++ all day and all out, right? And then nonstop all day and all out, sending it live. And that helped everything. Then the pressure is gone because I know what my setups are. And at the same time, every single day, I'm also reminding like, manage risk, right? Even today, who cares if it's a loss? By the end of the week, we're going to be green. By the end of the month, we're going to be green, regardless of that, right? So me just telling them that also takes away any type of pressure that I have because I'm letting them know ahead of time, right? It's not like I'm giving them expectation where you're going to have a 101% win rate, right? Then I'm like, oh shoot, I lose once. Oh my gosh. No. I'm giving them realistic expectations. So because I provide them realistic expectation, what they're getting into, then the pressure is flies
And
away
that's
from me.
important. Yeah, that's really important. Do you trade funded or just live?
I do funded and I do live.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much are you funded with currently?
So I have over 1.2 right now.
Okay.
1.2. Yeah.
Nice. Do
Yeah.
you think that, and I don't know what your live account looks like, but is there any added, what's this like, is there any psychology that needs to be worked on when you're funded with 1.2
Uh-huh.
versus just, again, I don't know what your live account looks like. It could
Yeah.
also be 1.2 mil. But does the psychology change for you when it comes to your live account versus your prop account?
Yeah. So the thing is with the prop account is obviously you're putting restrictions, right? So there's a
Yeah.
certain amount you can lose, there's a certain amount you can win or whatnot, right? So obviously I want to, minor my risk to either 1%, 0.5%, what it needs to be. All I really do now is I have a copy account that just copies to my live account.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of putting the risk at that regular 1%, 0.5%, it's more at that 3% level.
Got
Because
it.
then I know I have, big drawdown to play with. So then I just move it to the side and say, okay, it's all good.
Nice. And how long have you been trading with prop accounts?
I've been trading prop accounts, so 1.5 years, I say 1.5
Okay.
years. About.
Do you think that, or I'm interested to know your view on the prop not regulations per se, but the restrictions, like the trading restrictions in terms of the drawdown and the profit targets. Do you
Okay.
think it's helped you and potentially your students also become better traders because there's these guidelines that they have to stay within?
Yeah, there's a certain restriction where you have to like a certain amount that you can lose during a day. So obviously it helps you not tilt over.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because then obviously if you have a certain account where you don't have that parameter for you where you're going to lose your account, your brain is going to trick you because our brain is on survival instinct. Like that's the reality of it, right? We're mammals that want to survive. Like that's how it's been for a long time. So our brain will switch over to survival instinct when something's going against us, right? So then your brain will trick you and be like, no, you got to make it back. You got to go. You got to make it back. You got to go. And then you'll tilt until that whole account is gone, right? But if you know there's a certain parameter where you can't lose, say, for example, 5% in a day, then obviously you'll have limitations where it's like, okay, maximum is 2%. That's it. That's completely it. Let's keep a 3% distance, 2%. That's it for the day. On to the next, right? And then that follows onto your live account. That follows onto how you trade in general, especially when you get introduced to prop firms. That's what you're introduced with. Restrictions. That's what you're introduced with. Pretty much they're kind of forcing you to manage your risk, right? So that's going to translate into when the time is right for your live account, right? If they use the capital to put it into their live account.
Yeah, which I think is like the key. I think being able to rack up the payouts as much as you can and transfer those payouts to a live account.
Excellent.
So then, to your point, I think it's great utilizing a copy trader as well.
Yeah.
Because again, you're checking off all the boxes with that. What's been your biggest payout with prop firms?
My biggest payout was about 18.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
When
18.
was that?
That was about 2 months ago.
Okay.
2 months ago. Yeah.
How did that feel?
It felt good because what I do is just me personally.
Yeah.
I don't like to take big withdrawals. I just like to because there's a lot of issues. Like if you see with prop firms, like in the past, if my forex funds, there's X, Y, and Z. So I just played on the safe side. Just me personally as a trader. So I usually like to just slowly take out a certain amount, and then that's how I play it. Yeah.
And what's been your biggest loss? Prop firm, live, whatever.
My biggest loss?
Yeah.
Like I've blown a lot of accounts in my past.
Yeah.
I've blown a lot before, but in terms
or I guess maybe the most like memorable loss that you've had.
In the past, I've blown an account where I put my personal live account from 5,000 to like 0. So that's the most memorable thing for me. When I had $5,000 of my money in, and it just gone like that.
Yeah. And what happened there?
I just tilted. I tilted, but that's obviously my earlier stages.
Yeah.
Right. But I just tilted over, like I said, and I understand it because like the same way how I have like I said for like journaling, how you want to journal, you want to study your trades. It's also important to study yourself at the same time, right? You want to study yourself. You want to see, okay, how do you do? You want to see how do you react? What is it that you're doing? What is it? And then you start to see, obviously, okay, this was what led to the tilting. This is what led to it. Okay, if that's what led to it, how about we try to knock it off, right? How about we try to exit out, right? So then as you just don't put yourself in a predicament that it's going to lead to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like, for instance, like, it's going to sound weird, but for people that like are like addicted to, let's say, porn, for example.
Okay.
Right? They're not like, they know they shouldn't be following super hot Instagram models.
Yeah,
right?
it's a temptation.
That's what I'm saying. So they're putting themselves in that predicament that might lead to that. And then why are you putting yourself in that, right? Or
Yeah.
putting yourself in the wrong circles when it's it's going to lead to that, right? But once
Yeah.
you cut off the that first primary, it won't lead to any other secondaries. That's going to lead to any other causes, right? So you really have to study yourself on that.
That's a good point. That's again, it comes down to self-awareness, right? And setting yourself up for success.
100%.
For people who are tuning in, again, this could be, I love to think about the fact that this could be someone's first exposure, because obviously your first exposure to trading ultimately changed your life. And I think almost every trader could say the same. What piece of advice do you have for people who are just getting started?
Okay. For this, I'm going to look at the camera.
There you go.
So the piece of advice that I have for you guys is stay focused and don't focus primarily on the money aspect. All right. Focus on building your skill. Because if you focus on building your skill day in and day out, the byproduct of that is going to be you making a lot of money. End of discussion. That's it. But if you're really focused on, I got to make this, I got to make that, greed is going to take over and you're going to start to mess up. So only focus on building good habits and everything after will change for the rest of your life, right? That's one for them usually. Another thing that I have to say is take advantage of prop firms. Like I say that as well, right? Because prop firms now, like it wasn't there long ago. Now that it's here, take advantage, because you're not going to be put in a situation where you have to risk a lot, right? You can risk a certain amount and be like, okay. And then the return on price, right? So for instance, like for new people, however much it may be, like what, 500, 600, whatever for like a 100K account.
Yeah, like 500.
Right? So now you're paying 500 for a 100K account, right? But let's just say you didn't buy that 100K account. Let's say now you're trading it with your live money. And you're like, all right, I want to risk 1% for 2%. You're like pretty much risking like $50 for like 100, or like what's the logic of that? You paid 500 for that. So imagine you have the skill, but you're just holding yourself back at that point, right? So if you really focus, and this is after you, remember, focus on building good habits, building the skill. That's the primary focus. But after you finally have that focus and you finally build that skill, then that's the time where you have to take advantage of prop firms.
Yeah.
Right? You really have to take advantage of it. And that's what's going to make the difference, 100%.
And then one more question in terms of a piece of advice. That's the first, that's the beginner advice for someone that's deep in it now.
Yeah.
And they're like, they don't see the light. They're like, they just blew that 5K account that you've blown. They're like, I don't see the light. I know there's light, but I'm blind. I can't see it right now. What piece of advice do you have for them?
Okay, beautiful. I'd say make sure your edge is on the spot, right? One thing, a lot of people, of course, psychology is important. Of course, all that is important. But to be really honest with you, edge is very important. Edge is the real deal, right? Imagine you don't have an edge. Psychology is useless.
Yeah.
Risk management is useless, right?
Yeah.
So they have to make sure, I'd recommend them to have an edge that is proven, that works, consistent, that should have a good, because think about it. If you're in a position where you can't see the light, that probably means you're losing a lot. Right? So stop aiming for high risk to rewards, 1 to 5, 1 to 6, 1 to 10, 1 to 15, but you lose. If that's not good for your psychology, start with small wins and then work your way up from there. Right? Find a strategy, find the edge that can just give you consistent wins enough where then you can become profitable, where then you can see payouts, where then you can see whatnot. So focus primarily on those targets. And then as time progresses, you go. So edge, number one, focus on the edge. Once you have your edge, I'd say 60% is edge. So once you have your edge, 30% now is risk management. So 30% is understanding what it is you're risking. What is your actual risk toward? Are you holding your trade even after you're supposed to hit your take profit? Are you just letting it fly, right? Maybe that could be what's holding you back from, seeing the light, right? Are you not letting it hit your stop loss? Are you just dragging it, saying, praying, oh, please let it go up? Like, what are you doing? Study yourself. So if you're not seeing the other side of something, that means you're probably not studying yourself enough to see what your errors may be. So if you just take the time to reflect, and like you said, just have that self-awareness to see what's going right, what's going wrong, then you'll see that. So after the 30% risk management, 60% edge, then I'd say 10% now is the psychology, right? You're like, what, 10%? I'll tell you why.
Yeah, tell us.
Because the reason why is because if you have an edge that's so strong, an edge that's so consistent, an edge that's so beautiful, and you couple that with the fact that you're actually managing risk correctly, the psychology is not going to be as effective as it would if you had an edge that was not working, and if you had an edge that was losing you day in and day out, and now your psychology clicked in, and that's what's leading you to tilt over, right? So the primary focus, in my opinion, should be having that strong edge, finding that first. Once you find that edge, then risk management. Once you find that risk management, psychology is going to be a bit easier for you now.
Yeah.
Right there and then.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
How I see
money.
it. 100%.
I hope everyone's taking notes.
I hope
I'm
so.
yeah, I hope
I hope
everyone's
so.
taking notes. That's very, very helpful for both beginners and people who are in it and they're like, damn, I know there's a light, but it's it's dark right now.
Yeah.
I can't
No,
see it.
100%.
Where you are now, I mean, and maybe you saw yourself here. Maybe, we started this podcast off and you said you had a job at McDonald's and
Yeah.
now you're a full-time trader.
Yeah.
What's next for you?
So in the future, the idea is to kind of build a hedge fund.
Okay.
That's what I want to do. So I'm trying to create clones of me, people that can trade the exact same way as me. So that's why I don't know, like I try to give them everything I know, right? To an extent, everything I know that's enough to make them profitable, but also giving them things that, look, if this happens, you're going to take a loss. So avoiding mistakes at the same time. So I don't want to just like provide them with, all right, this is my strategy, go enjoy yourself. But I want to provide them with, all right, this is my strategy, go enjoy yourself. But at the same time, this is my strategy. If this happens, don't enter though. If this happens, don't enter though, right? This is how you can avoid mistakes. If the market is bleeding at a particular point, right? People, if they know me, don't like, then don't look for that RMR. It's useless, right? There's certain areas, there's certain times where you don't want to enter, right? For instance, okay, I'll just give this one out because it's not too deep. When I look at price, every single trade that I take, although I do target those equal highs, I just need to make sure there's a lot of engineered liquidity at least. So if I have price making a high, making a high, making a high, making a high, I'm not gonna don't get to it. I'm not gonna say, okay, I'm gonna hope it's gonna go up and take out the thing, and then no, that's not how I do it, right? I wait for a clear market structure shift, then I wait for a fair value gap, right, within a particular zone. But I make sure there's a lot of engineered liquidity, so it may not happen every day. That's the thing, but I'm okay with that. I'm suffice with that because I know it'll hit. So once it hits, engineered. Then we escape, then we get a fair value gap, then we tap, then we enter, then we fly. That's what I want. That's what I wait for day in and day out. If it's bleeding down, I don't want it. If there's other parameters that I shared that things are not meant to happen, it doesn't happen, right? So long story short, I want to make clones of me. I want to make copy and paste versions of me. And that would be crazy. And what's crazy is actually one of my students flown out here, right?
Oh, nice.
And then I seen him, and then he was like, bro, Hamuzi, when you told me about the IEH plus the BAG, he was like, everything was so spot on. Because he's in the place where I teach, like the mentor, but he's also in the place where I send it out live.
Nice.
So he gets the best of both worlds at the same time, right? And then it was lovely. And even this morning, when I took a trade, I'm assuming he probably took it too, in my bed, in the hotel. I was like, let me just sit. So the beauty of that is honestly, that's what it is, right? I want clones of me, make copy and paste. So that's my primary focus. My focus was just, all right, let them be profitable, but now it started to change a bit. I want to select a few, like a good 20, 30, and then really make them copy and paste. Yeah.
There we go.
That's what I want for sure.
That's awesome. Are you funded with TopTier or no?
No, but I'm planning on, after the keynote and everything, I plan on getting an account with them for sure soon.
There we
100%,
go.
100%.
There we are. Hamuzi, this has been incredible. And I know that you said this was your first pod. Well, you crushed it.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Hamuzi Prime. It should be verified with 135,000 followers. Ignore the fake accounts because there are a lot of people in this space that makes a lot of fake accounts, which is crazy, right? Or the same name on TikTok, Hamuzi Prime. If you message me, I tend to respond as much as I can. And then YouTube, Hamuzi, whatever you search up Hamuzi, you should pop up, to be honest with you. First.
Next time we have you on the podcast, you'll be a top-tier funded trader.
Say less.
Okay.
Say less. Beautiful.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Hamuzi. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.